Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. After Qingzhu's figure disappeared, the people from the Temple of Holy Fire were still in a daze. There was a strange look in Fengzhu's eyes, and he said nervously, "Kid, are those two things real?" Yunxiao gave him a glance and said, "It seems that Noah's ship is really here. Otherwise, Little Green wouldn't have to hide it and would have just denied it." He also knew about the existence of Noah's ship, but he couldn't take it out. Fengzhu and the others looked at each other, all drenched in cold sweat. They could deduce so much information with just a no comment? Let's continue waiting. Yunxiao sat down cross-legged again and said, "I finally understand the purpose of the monster race. They probably want to take the true body of the ancient evergreen tree. As for its purpose, it's probably to repair Sheng's profound level weapon. If Noah's ship appeared, they would never let it go. Little Green hasn't been able to take out Noah's ship for so many years, so the importance of the key can be seen. This way, we don't have to panic. Let's wait for them to make a fuss first." He was in a good state of mind. After sitting down cross-legged, he took out the 100 million mid-grade primordial stones that Qian Wudi had given him and started cultivating. He generously exploded a large number of vitality stones, and with the flow of the power of Summer's laws, an excellent cultivation environment was formed on the Tiger King chariot. "You're welcome. There are so many primeval stones, I can't use them all by myself. We should share the good things." Fengzhu was also in awe. It seemed that this kid's current achievements were not by chance. He was also an expert himself, so he naturally knew that the more effort he put in, the more rewards he would get. He was also quite broad-minded and knew how to win people over. The people of the Temple of Holy Fire also sat down and began to cultivate, but soon they frowned. Although they were deep in the spirit qi, they could not absorb any primordial qi around Yunxiao, as all of it had been poured into his body like a river. After the initial shock, they also felt that they were somewhat used to it. They left the chariot one after another and sat cross-legged in the air. Although the spiritual energy was thinner, they could still drink some soup. Yunxiao's body was like a vortex as batches of primordial stones exploded and were soon sucked dry. The people of the Temple of Holy Fire sat further and further away from him, and in the end, they could not even find a single bit of primordial qi. They were so vexed that they simply began to feel the laws, no longer hoping to share his primordial stones. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. Suddenly, there was a constant vibration in the space, and the whole world trembled. It felt like the earth was shaking and the mountains were shaking. Yunxiao and the others woke up from their cultivation one after another. They looked around and found nothing unusual, but the strong vibration was still coming from a distance, and they could not find the source. Someone is trying to break the formation by force. After staring at the sky for a while, Yunxiao said resolutely, "Everyone, return quickly. Let's go to the other 3 seasons to take a look." The people of the Temple of Holy Fire immediately returned to the chariot. Yunxiao quickly carved an array, and the chariot was surrounded by beams of light, which gradually disappeared into the summer. In the spring sky, there was a place where the dark willows were hidden and the flowers brightened. Nguduangyu was holding a formation disc in its hand, and it seemed to be trying to find the correct direction. He was pacing back and forth with a sad face, and it kept mumbling to itself, 3 steps to the left, 7 steps to the right. No, it's chaotic again." He picked up the array board and smacked his head, going crazy. Beams of golden light shot out from the formation disc, forming complicated lines in the air that constantly crisscrossed and derived from each other. There were also a large number of numbers arranged in a row, which were being calculated. Nguduangyu's eyes were constantly reading the changes, and its mind was quickly calculating. His mouth quickly reported all kinds of numbers, 9, 6, 17, 18, 3 pishio. The deduction became faster and faster, and the rays of light and words of light were so fast that only afterimages were left. They shone on Nguduangyu's face, and his brows furrowed even more. 19, stop. He suddenly shouted as his palm directly grabbed at the array board. All the numbers and lines gathered in the air and slowly fell to the ground. They spread out like a spider web, appearing under his feet and spreading to a distance in front of him. Nguduongyu counted silently and kept the disc array. It then carefully walked down along the lines. 56, it should be here. He stepped on the grass with one foot, and a thick willow tree blocked his eyes. He looked carefully, and this willow tree was not much different from the others. Its branches and leaves were luxuriant, and under the flow of the power of spring, it grew more and more. Nguduongyu pointed out a finger, and with just a few fingers, golden symbols and all sorts of lines were carved on the willow tree. The entire willow tree began to shine with a golden light, and it gradually turned into ashes in the light. Following the destruction of the willow tree, 3 circular formations appeared in the surroundings. They were separated by a distance and expanded infinitely. I didn't buy this heaven-developing spell plate for nothing. I finally found it. He was overjoyed. As he looked at the constantly changing scenery around him, he could not suppress the excitement in his heart. Not only was the precious treasure that he longed for about to appear in front of him, but he also felt a great sense of accomplishment to be able to find the formation set up by a martial sovereign king. The 3 formations spread out in parallel on the ground, almost connecting heaven and earth, forming 3 realms of their own, showing their magnificence. As expected of a formation set up by a king-level expert. I can't catch up with this kind of formation intent. Nguduongyu was amazed. It carefully watched the evolution of the array and soon fell into it, becoming a little obsessed. The deduction of the array intent derived from those 3 great arrays contained Tongguang's supreme comprehension of array Tao. To every array master, this was already the greatest wealth. After the formation was developed to its extreme, it started to decline. The 3 infinitely large formations were condensed rapidly and turned into 3 purest masses of energy that stopped in the air and gradually melted together. That's Luo. Nguduongyu's eyes were filled with joy, but it gradually turned into shock, and finally, its face turned pale. Rule of the heavens reign. He roared in shock and said in a panic, how could this be? This place is actually a trap? His entire body suddenly became extremely cold. The ball of energy in the air transformed into the shape of a drop of water and slowly dispersed, sprinkling down. The drops of rain were like smoke and fog, and they were silent. When they entered Nguduongyu's eyes, they felt as if they had chilled its heart. All kinds of forces around its body dissipated, and its emperor chi of the 9 heavens became extremely difficult to circulate. It seemed to be completely suppressed in this rainy day. King-level master, I'll fuck your 18 generations of ancestors. Nguduongyu roared in fear, and the aura of death rushed up to its heart. The heaven-evoking spell plate in its hand instantly turned into a sharp sword, and in an instant, it shot out tens of thousands of sword rays, turning into a sea of swords to protect itself. Everything around it seemed to no longer exist, and only the sound of the rain could be heard. The sea of sword radiance grew weaker and weaker under the wind and rain, as if it would be annihilated at any moment. I'm not willing. I'm just here to be a bystander. Am I going to die here? Nguduongyu's eyes were filled with despair. It gritted its teeth and poured all its power into the Tianyan magic sword, stimulating its weapon reserves to the extreme. What kind of broken spell plate is this? I spent all my fortune to buy it, but it ended up harming me. Explode, explode, explode. The Tianyan magic sword emitted a dazzling light and suddenly exploded. The power swept out in all directions, forming a storm that resisted the rule of rain. Nguduongyu's eyes lit up as if he had seen a glimmer of hope. All of a sudden, 7 or 8 high-level profound-level weapons appeared around him. He grabbed a handful of high-level medicinal pills and swallowed them like beans. The Emperor Chi of the 9 heavens crazily poured into those profound-level weapons, ranging from 6th to 8th level. At this moment, he could not care so much. Not to mention profound-level weapons, as long as he could save his life, he would even take out his underwear and explode it. Emperor Chi of the 9 heavens, draw. The 7 or 8 profound-level weapons lined up and released a huge light at the same time. His eyes were blinded. He shouted, and the profound level weapon danced in his hand like a long stick, smashing forward. He himself also turned into a ray of light, and a golden armor appeared on his body. He rushed up and shouted, "Explode, explode, explode. Open up a path for me, I don't want to die." Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. The profound level weapons exploded one by one, their powers linking together and stacking together, turning into a mighty dragon that roared and charged towards the sky of rain. Boom boom boom. The mighty dragon exploded, and Guduongyu was hit by the impact. Its golden armor was destroyed, and it spat out a mouthful of blood. The space in front of him gradually twisted, and a passage that was made during the day appeared, leading to an unknown outside. He couldn't care about anything else. He used the last bit of energy in his dantian and instantly rushed out. The white passage only appeared for a moment, and it gradually submerged after he rushed through it. The entire sky was drizzled. The spring rain was as precious as oil. The willows, peach flowers, grass, swallows, and goldfish were growing and playing under the spring rain. It was a huge visual contrast to the previous powerful collision, which was a little difficult to adapt to. Qing revealed an expression of disbelief as it stood in the center of the barrier. It muttered to itself in shock. He activated the void eye and the law of rain, yet he still managed to escape. The performance of Nguduongyu had shocked him greatly. He had thought that it was a dead end, but he had actually opened a path out of it. It seems like you're not an ordinary martial sovereign either. Fortunately, you're severely injured. Let me end you. The scenery in front of little Qing's eyes kept changing, as if it was searching for traces of the sunfish boat. It muttered to itself, where did he escape to? Even if a teleportation portal was activated, they couldn't escape the Four Seasons barrier. They must be hiding in one of the seasons. That light of day seems to be winter? The entire barrier was under his control, but if the other party used a secret technique to hide himself, he would not be able to catch him in a short time. He extended his soul consciousness into the barrier of winter and began to search. Suddenly, he seemed to have found something. His expression changed drastically, and a murderous intent immediately appeared in his eyes. In a land of ice and snow, 1,000 miles of land was frozen. More than a dozen people were quietly floating above a plain. The ground was as smooth as a mirror. It was a frozen lake, and waves of cold air were rising. Li was the only one who was carving something on the surface of the lake. She had carved more than a dozen patterns of various sizes within a 1,000-meter radius. In addition to all kinds of strange lines and symbols, there were also some demonic beasts of various shapes and sizes that were vivid and lifelike. These images seemed to exist alone, but they were connected and resonated with each other. Looking down from above, they were connected into one, like a picture of a fierce beast. Li's final stroke blew away the ice shards on the lake's surface. She leaped into the air and hovered above the center of the pattern. Everyone, spread out. I've broken this formation core. When the people from the Four Extremes sect heard this, they quickly flew above the lake and watched from a distance. There were only a few monsters left in the sky. Yu was worried and said, "This Four Seasons formation is a never-ending loop with no exit. The strength of the person who set up the formation is unimaginable. Was this really where the eye of the formation was? I'm afraid that he'll set up a void eye and have a 90% chance of survival." Yi smiled and seemed to be very confident. "You don't have to worry about that. She's the Li of the Jiuli tribe. In the entire demon race, which branch could compare to the Jiuli tribe in terms of secret techniques and special techniques? Right, Li?" Li's indifferent face became unprecedentedly serious at this moment, and a trace of worry that was hard to detect flashed through his eyes. Sheng's smile froze. "What's the matter?" he asked, confused. "Is there a problem? In terms of formation skills, I may not be the best in my era, but I'm still one of the best. However, this Four Seasons formation is unbelievably perfect. I can't find any flaws. I can't believe who set up this formation. Could it be a godly state expert? How is that possible?" Sheng gasped. Not just formations, even rules and martial arts have flaws. As long as it exists, it will be destroyed. Li's face was filled with respect as she said solemnly, "That's right. That's why the person who set up the formation was far more accomplished than me. That's why I couldn't find the flaws in his formation and could only find the formation's eye to break it open by force." However, in this world of winter, there were at least 3 virtual eyes that combined reality and illusion, making them unpredictable. The 3 virtual eyes that appeared before him all contained extremely terrifying power. If he broke them wrongly, he would probably be beyond redemption. So, Ingluo. Her face was extremely serious as she said, "Everyone, please leave this place, the further the better." After Li finished speaking, the atmosphere above the lake became extremely heavy. Everyone's expression was depressed and extremely ugly. "How confident are you?" Sheng asked in a deep voice. "Lord Sheng, I don't want to lie to you," Li said calmly. "I'm at least 80% sure that this formation core is a real eye, but I'm only 50% sure that I can break it. I'm not even 10% sure that I'll be safe and sound after breaking it." She was one of the few existences in the demon race of that era who had uncountable array Dao attainments. Since she had said so, it could be seen that the array eye was extremely terrifying. She looked around and smiled bitterly. This 4 seasons barrier is completely condensed from the laws of Earth, and the formation's eye is often the most dangerous place. In other words, the energy contained within is at least the power of laws. Who else below the martial sovereign of the 9 heavens realm could go against the rules of this realm? Therefore, this is a sure kill trap for those below the martial supreme realm, unless they have a holy weapon or are like us, able to fully exert the power of a 9th tier profound weapon. So, Lord Sheng, you don't have to worry too much. My 9 Li war drum is more than enough to protect me." She proudly patted the little red drum on her waist, and a full-blooded sound shook out, as if to give herself some confidence. However, the 4 people present could tell that she was pretending to be relaxed to comfort everyone, and their hearts became even heavier. "Let me break this formation," you said. "Li, tell me the method. With my current physical body, it's strong enough to withstand anything. If it really doesn't work, I can instantly teleport with my mental power and escape from danger. I'm more suitable than you to be the one to break the formation." Li sneered disdainfully, "Can your physical body be stronger than my war drum? Don't worry, there's no formation in this world that I don't dare to break." She didn't let the others say anything and directly shouted, "Back off, don't get in my way." Li. "Forget it," Sheng said sternly as he stared at her, "it's not worth the risk. I can't lose any more of you. These 4 seasons were also a good place to cultivate. Let's just wait for someone else to break the formation, or wait for the power of the 9 heavens to be restored before we break out." "Lord Sheng, don't lie to yourself," Li said. "Without the nourishment of a large number of heavenly treasures, it's impossible for us to return to the 9 heavens realm with the injuries accumulated on our bodies. Moreover, if I can't break this formation, then there are only a few people in the world who can." Shang's face was unsightly, and his eyes flickered with a strange light. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. All of a sudden, the entire space trembled violently. Everyone swayed. Yi said, "What's going on? With such a strong vibration, who is fighting?" Li suddenly revealed a look of great joy and said, "No one is fighting. Someone has triggered the rules. You guys get out of the way. This is the best time to break the formation." She couldn't care about explaining to everyone and hurriedly opened her arms. Rays of light overflowed from her body and converged in front of her body, gradually forming a white ball of light. There was also a soft green light flashing on the outside, and it fell towards the center of the array in the lake. Then, she took down the small drum from her waist and began to beat it in the air. As she beat the drum, her feet began to take strange steps. With every step, a ray of light would overflow from her feet and fall into the array below. Shang's face was serious. He waved at the other 2, signaling them to back off. He himself flashed a few times and appeared 1,000 meters away, looking at them with a cold face. Yu and Ihafu were also very serious. They retreated behind Shang and were worried for Li. The beast-like formation on the lake began to shine. One by one, the demonic beasts formed by the light stood up from the formation and sank into the frozen lake. There seemed to be no end to them. As Li's battle drum beat, the speed at which the light formed became faster and faster. After dozens of light beasts had sunk, the surface of the lake began to change. The white ice gradually turned blue and became deeper and deeper, and began to crack.
Ha!
Rise! Li's eyes narrowed and he shouted. A series of drum beats came down. The huge beast picture on the ice seemed to come alive. It was formed by a large amount of light and stood up with a roar. Stop! At this time, a horrified roar came from the sky. Qing Zhu's figure suddenly appeared in the sky, looking down with a pale face, its face full of shock and amazement. At this moment, the entire layer of ice suddenly cracked, producing an earth-shattering sound. A large amount of water vapor rushed into the sky, and as soon as it emerged from the ice, it formed a huge ice tip. The huge beast was directly pierced by the ice tip on the top layer, and it let out a huge roar before it was completely annihilated. Li was shocked. She couldn't believe his eyes as he watched the beast disappear and the icicles continue to surge up at an unimaginable speed. Qing Zhu's face turned pale and its eyes were filled with hatred. However, it was helpless and it roared in anger, "We're finished. You guys are in big trouble." He stomped his foot and instantly disappeared. The vast and boundless lake began to collapse, and countless water vapor turned into ice spikes that surged up from below. As if the sea had changed into mulberry fields, a huge iceberg was formed in an instant, swallowing the dumbfounded Li in the air. A huge tremor began to spread, but it seemed to be just the beginning. With the rise of the ice mountain, not only in winter, but the space of the other 3 seasons also became somewhat unstable. At the same time, it seemed to be in a trance, as if it was about to break. The people of the 4 extremes sect were all panicking. The mountain was still rising, and the mountain wall was pressing down on them. Everyone had a look of fear on their faces as they quickly fled into the distance. Sheng and the other 3 were furious. They flew up into the sky at high speed, trying to rush into the mountain to save Li, who was still in a state of crisis. However, the mountain was rising far faster than they could, as if it was going to hold up the sky. After an unknown amount of time, the mountain's expansion finally stopped. From afar, it looked like a towering mountain that reached the heavens. The ice and snow on the mountaintop suddenly began to melt. A blazing sun appeared out of nowhere and appeared in the sky, melting half of the ice and snow on the mountaintop rapidly, turning it into a scorching land where not even a blade of grass grew. However, the grass on the mountainside was full of spring. It was full of vitality and was growing with all its might. It looked very happy. There were also peach flowers that spread out, and their pink color drifted down, covering the mountain and forming a long sea of flowers. But what was shocking was that the trees in the mountains were bleak and withered. The dead leaves were swaying with the wind, and the dew immediately formed autumn frost when it appeared. However, the foot of the mountain was covered in ice and snow, and the land that stretched for thousands of miles was frozen. The colors of the 4 seasons all appeared within a single mountain. The environment in the far distance also began to change. The 4 seasons enchantment that was originally interlocked with each other appeared at the same time, forming a huge enchantment thousands of miles away from the mountain. The 4 seasons were connected together: spring in the east, summer in the west, autumn in the south, and winter in the north. They formed the boundary of the 4 seasons, looking at each other from a distance. Inside the winter territory, Nguduangyu was resting on a large rock with a pale face. He was suddenly stunned by the scene in front of it. With an unwilling expression, it shivered with excitement and said, "The immortal mountain really is the 4 seasons immortal mountain. King-level Martial Sovereign Tengguang has indeed placed this treasure here." He was so excited that he seemed to want to stand up from the stone, but he seemed to be extremely powerless. After struggling a few times, he fell down again.